Hey, are you sick of orchid pests and disease? Let's talk about how to heal your orchids. I'm guessing you're watching this video because you noticed that your orchid is suffering in some way from either a pest or a disease, and you want to know what to do about it. In this video, I'll show you how to identify common orchid pests and diseases, how to treat them, and, most importantly, how to prevent pests and disease. Let's talk about how to identify and treat orchid pests and diseases like mealybugs, scale, spider mites, aphids, snails, and slugs, fungal, bacterial, and viral infections. Plus, we'll discuss what to do about when your orchid leaves get sunburned. We'll talk about pest treatments using insecticidal soap, ultra-refined horticulture oil, rubbing alcohol, iron phosphate. And we'll discuss disease treatments, such as removing diseased portions with sterilized shears, applying cinnamon paste, and copper soap fungicide. We'll also discuss prevention, use air movement, sterilized tools, and take care when watering. The first pest is scale. Hard, light brown bumps that you cannot easily scrape away indicate Bacterial scale. Scale, particularly armored or Bacterial scale, is considered the worst of orchid pests. Unlike mealybugs, you can't simply use your fingers to brush the scale away. The scale has a thick, detached shell that is practically cemented to the orchid. Look on leaves and all around the base of the plant for signs of this pest. Scale can be difficult to get rid of because they hide in every imaginable nook and cranny. To treat scale, use an old toothbrush, 70% rubbing alcohol, and a pair of surgical gloves to scrub your orchid. This may seem overwhelming when you first look at your orchid, especially if your orchid is large, with lots of leaves and pseudobulbs, but you can do it. Once you get started, it's not so bad. Remember, repeated treatment is recommended. Now for mealybugs. If you notice a cottony, web-like substance around the base of the plant on pseudobulbs, rhizomes, or on the underside of your leaves, you may have mealybugs. Another tip-off is the presence of ants. Mealybugs excrete honeydew that attracts ants. Now for spider mites. Not all spider mites spin webs. Because the mites are so tiny, the best indicator of spider mites is leaf damage. Look for lots of tiny indents, where the spider mites have sucked chlorophyll and sap. Though, if you do have particularly good eyesight, spider mites can be seen. To treat mealybugs and spider mites, isolate the infected orchids from the rest of your collection. Spray the plant with horticulture oil. This is most effective when the bugs are in the nymph phase. Now, to identify and treat aphids. Look for aphids on the most tender parts of your orchid, clustering on new growth. Look for soft-bodied, green, yellow, or black soft-bodied insects. Fortunately, orchids are not an aphid's first choice for a meal. These guys are bad because they fly from plant to plant, spreading pathogens, and that can include viruses. To treat aphids, just take your orchid outside and spray off the aphids. Keep an eye on your orchids because it only takes one aphid to reproduce and start a colony. Ants love honeydew, a sweet, sticky substance secreted by healthy orchids and excreted by pests such as mealybugs and spider mites. When you see ants, look for other pests. Otherwise, a damp cloth will clean up the honeydew and the ants will go away. Let's talk about some larger pests. Snails and slugs. To treat them, use a product called Sluggo, which contains iron phosphate. It is said to be much safer than other products. To use it, just sprinkle it around your orchids. The snails and slugs will feed on the Sluggo and die. The best way to prevent pests is to use your eyes. If you're like me, this may mean using a pair of magnifying glasses. Before buying orchids, give them a quick look. Watering and repotting are also convenient times to do a quick orchid health check. Examine leaves, especially the underside. Inspect pseudobulbs, opening the sheaths and peeking inside. Look at the potting medium, and, if you can, look at the roots. Let's talk about fungus. The key indicator of fungus is rot. Root, rhizome, pseudobulb, rot, and leaf spots can all indicate fungus. This Phalaenopsis orchid flower has botrytis, a fungal disease. Like the fungal spotting, botrytis, bacterial spotting is also very common on thin leaf orchids, such as oncidiums. But as you can see, it can also grow on other orchid leaves, such as this Dendrobium orchid leaf. Since we can't see bacteria and fungus, we can look for the symptoms, spotting and rot. Other symptoms can include a bad smell. Sometimes you'll just notice a plant that seems stunted. A closer inspection shows that the roots are rotted and have a fungal or bacterial infection. Look for round or oval spots that are black or brown. To treat fungal and bacterial infections, first use sterilized pruning shears to cut away the affected area. Second, apply a cinnamon paste to the lesion. To make the cinnamon paste, mix cinnamon with water, or for a more lasting paste, mix the cinnamon with Elmer's glue. Cinnamon possesses antibacterial properties, making it a natural choice to treat bacteria, plus it's something that you've already have on hand. Third, for fungal infections, apply beneficial fungi or a copper-based insecticidal soap. Likewise, for bacterial infections, apply horticulture oil or insecticidal soap. To prevent fungal and bacterial infections, just remember 4 things. Number 1, always use a fan. Good air movement will make a world of difference. Number 2, always sterilize your tools. 3, try not to overwater. For orchids with pseudobulbs, this includes allowing potting media to dry out between watering. Overwatering leads to rot, and rot leads to infection. Number 4, applying beneficial fungi and bacteria is very helpful. Let's talk about how to identify viruses. Viruses tend to be in the plant tissue, where bacteria and fungus tend to be on the plant tissue. Viruses are bad news because they can be difficult to diagnose and almost impossible to cure. Viruses can be identified by color break in blooms. To accurately identify a virus, you must take a sample and send it to a commercial lab. Treatment for orchid viruses is very expensive and takes specialized lab equipment. Sometimes the best course is to throw out such plants. For this reason, orchid viruses are best prevented rather than treated. Here's how viruses are spread. The sap from an infected orchid comes in contact with the sap of a healthy orchid. Viruses are transmitted in 2 ways, tools and insects. To prevent tool transmission, make sanitation a top priority. To prevent insect transmission, keep insects under control. If you don't want to throw out an infected orchid, keep it away from your other plants. Use caution and keep all tools like watering cans, razor blades, etc. away from the infected orchid. As always, if you use a razor blade, be sure to throw it out after use. Lastly, let's discuss sunburn. Sunburned orchid leaves results in destroying the leaf tissue. At first, the leaf will just feel squishy. Over time, the leaf will continue to deteriorate, and the leaf will turn from green to brown and eventually black. The best course of action to treat sunburn is to remove the sunburned leaf with sterilized shears or a single-edge razor blade. Apply a cinnamon paste to the lesion. Use care not to expose the orchid to the possibility of sunburn. If you suspect sunburn, move your orchid further away from the window or light. Never leave your orchid in your car. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful in helping you care for your orchids, please like and subscribe. To get even more information on caring for your orchids, including treating, identifying, and preventing orchid pests and disease, just Google Orchid Bliss Treat Pests and Disease.